Man was 53 years old, 53, when he was thrown in prison. In prison. Not unusual for him, because in the first 53 years of his life, he was in and out of prison every other week. He was 53 years old, and he was bankrupt and penniless. Not unusual for him, because almost every minute of his 53 years, he was bankrupt and penniless. When they threw him in prison, he was drunk. Not unusual for him. He was drunk almost the day he was born, and he was still drunk when they threw him in prison at 53. The only jobs he ever had in his life were various government jobs. He was fired from every one of those jobs, every one of them. When he was in the military, he was dishonorably discharged and lost the use of his left hand. And rotting in prison at 53 years of age, he decides he's going to write a book. Any investors for this loser? Nobody's investing. Too bad. The book was written 418 years ago. Everyone in this room has read it numerous times, seen movies on it, seen stage plays on it. The book was entitled Don Quixote, and our prisoner's name was Cervantes. When your boat catches fire and you find that inspirational dissatisfaction, you are an unstoppable force. That brings me to Rose Barnett. Back in the early 1990s, when all of us were young and none of us had any gray hair whatsoever, Rose, every weekend from her Long Island home, traveled 100 miles to one of the greatest music venues at that time in the world, called Arrowhead Ranch. The musicians that she saw in the 1990s were a who's who in music. Fish, Hot Tuna, Billy Preston, Richie Havens, Spin Doctors. If you're under 30, you have no idea who the hell I'm talking about. But if you've been around, these are musicians you know, and you know very well. And it was the best time of her youth. She loved it. Bill Graham, the legendary promoter, possibly the greatest of all time, ran Arrowhead Ranch. And then, in late 1991, he died in a helicopter accident. And the music died. Arrowhead Ranch became an abandoned, burned-out building, run-down, seventh ring of hell. But it didn't stop Rose Barnett from going up there ever so often and walking around, taking a look, remembering what life was like when it was this ongoing great music venue that attracted tens of thousands of people. And then in 2017, she came to me. And here's what she said. I'm going for a divorce. An ugly one. I don't have much money at all, practically none. I'm probably clinically depressed, and I want to buy Arrowhead Ranch. Now, I didn't say this to her, but in my mind, my thoughts were something like this. You poor, delusional idiot. It takes money. But folks, never get in the way of someone who has inspirational dissatisfaction. She was not going to be stopped. And 6 years ago, to this day, she stood up the podium at the round table and announced that the delusional idiot was the new owner of Arrowhead Ranch. She began climbing higher mountains, and now 6 years later, business plan, projections, cash flow, earnings growth, revenue growth, how to build the hotels, what the costs are, how to return this venue to a Catskill Mountains that, if you haven't been there in a long time, it's a renaissance. She is one of the most inspiring people I've ever met. Rose, get the hell up here.
Greetings and thank you so much for the chance to be here today. I'd like to present an exciting opportunity. We're restoring a hotel and former dude ranch in historical and magical mountaintop destination in the Catskill Mountains of upstate New York. We're now almost 6 years into the project. It's been an exciting journey, and we're now up and running, starting to get some income with glamping. We're doing excursions, public and private events, and we have our nonprofit sister company, a horse rescue, up and running. It has 21 animals. So we're here today seeking to find the right financial partner because we feel like we're ready to take it to the next level. Let's see if I can get this thing to work. Okay. A music fan and horse lover, I first visited the Arrowhead in 1990. I immediately fell in love with it. The place had a certain vibe, an energy of peace and tranquility. It was beautiful and rugged and rustic and full of nice folks. Many of the staff that I met had come there as guests and ended up just, staying. They didn't want to leave, and they got jobs and ended up living there, and working. So I attended as often as I could during, my youth, as Stephen said, and I enjoyed picking blueberries from horseback on their 800 miles of trails and, attending music events. Let's see, I think I have a slide. There's just a diagram of the property. We are on both sides of a road, 70 acres. This is just a little slide about the progress we've made. We have a store, we have our liquor license, we have the nonprofit horse rescue. We hold free monthly markets to get the community involved. We have some nice glamping tents, and we do these tours. We've had some lovely private events. We love to put on a show. We throw a great party, and of course, safe and legal. And it's just a pleasure to host and watch the place come back to life. All right, so now we're going to go a little bit into the past. Some of these pictures I took. And these are just a little bit of the history of let me go back a little bit farther. It was originally built in the 1950s, and the hotel was called the Lake Plaza. Then in the 60s, it was purchased by a man named Alan Daniel, who made it into a dude ranch and named it Arrowhead, and he built 2 accessory buildings to the main building, getting it up to 55 rooms. Alan owned Arrowhead for over 3 decades, and I'm excited to say that he's now on our team in an advisory role. He lives in his 80s, he's in his 80s, but he's still very active, and he's still a very good, old school, bottom line businessman, which, obviously, as Stephen said, that's a different take than I have, so that's good. It's good to have a complimentary partner like that. So in 1991, Arrowhead Ranch, these are just some more pictures. This is what the hotel looked like. This is the building that burned down. Oh, I have my pointer. The stables we still have. They don't say that anymore. All right, so in 1991, that's when Arrowhead Ranch had its time to shine. The ranch started hosting music festivals, and Blues Traveler played. They fell in love with the place and were thinking, wow, maybe we should make this like our home base. We'll host our fans here all the time. And their manager just happened to be David Graham, whose father was Bill Graham, this famous concert promoter, and there's some of his credits. And that's David Graham. And that's the owner at the time, Kenny Hoff. Bill loved Kenny and Michelle, how hard they worked. Bill was a workaholic, so he could relate to that. He also was a waiter in the Catskills at Grossinger's and the Concord when he was in business school in his 20s. So he really loved the idea. So he decided to get involved. He put in $500,000 of his own money to improve the property, upgrade the electric, put lighting on on poles. things like that. So like, unfortunately, that would have probably continued if he didn't have that accident and perished that fall. So anyway, I have a slide of, we have Fish played, and that's, was very exciting, and it's still revered as one of the greatest Fish shows. They played 2 days during the daylight hours, and there was no showers, for the campers, so they set up like an outdoor, just a platform with some cold water feeds, and you could hear Trey say from the stage, "Music to shower by." Anyway, this is the list of the other bands that played that summer. Moving on. So I became a licensed realtor and a real estate investor later in my, more recently. And I always followed the property. One time it was actually even on eBay. That was the ad. It was painted green in the later years, which is now, some of the buildings are still that color, but it faded to white. Suspicious fire took down the building. The main building in 2011, our logo is, is kind of designed like a phoenix, because like coming back is like, rising from the flames, so it gives us inspiration. So let's see, so I wanted to tell this story. The building, after the fire, everybody really thought, wow, now it's really all over, The firemen just knocked what was left of the building down because it wasn't safe. At that point, the property became abandoned and really started to decay. It was just a big mess, and there was all kinds of violations. So I kept saying to myself, I kept stopping by to visit, and I kept saying to myself, somebody's gonna do this. Somebody's got to do something with this. This is just it's too much, it's too significant a property. First of all, it's a beautiful property, and it's a beautiful location. And second of all, it has all this history, So one day while I was visiting, that's kind of like what it looked like. This is a driveway. Let's see if I can get this to work. That's a driveway. It's just all like the debris here from the fire. So one day while I was visiting the property, something very strange happened to me. A voice spoke loud and clear inside my head and said, "No one else is going to take this on. This is what you are supposed to be doing." And I realized that my whole life at that moment, all the training and skills I had acquired were preparing me for this venture, So and I took the leap of faith and, bought the property in 2017. And since then, my life has taken on new meaning. My days are filled with countless joy as well as challenges. And we have a great team. We've made tremendous progress with support from our town, community, friends, and volunteers. And I just did I wanted to do a few slides about what's going on in the market at this time. Just coincidentally, it happens to be a great time to have started a resurgence, started a new startup, because 2019, we're right near the original site of Woodstock. And in 2019 was the 50-year anniversary. So people from all over, we hosted people from Ireland, Canada, the West Coast, all over, came out for that event. Like up where we live, the Woodstock anniversary weekend, mid-August, is literally like a holiday for us up there. It's amazing. So that put us in the spotlight. And then the pandemic in 2020 actually sort of helped us, because everyone fled from the cities. A lot of people started working remotely and made their country homes their full-time homes. People really rediscovered nature and hiking and camping, So our town, Liberty, was like a ghost town, and they really, really are supportive, and they really want cute tourist destinations that are going to bring people in. And this is just some of the stuff that's opened since I've moved here. There was a new water park and a really beautiful yoga retreat. Just the fishing is huge up there. This is just, that's what I was talking about. Some statistics about the spending and the travelers. Another long list, And this is stuff that's been there but, just, this is all within 20 miles of us. So, although it's rural and you'd never know there's that much going on, it's, there really is a lot to do, and a lot of, people are really rediscovering it. So here's just some shots of what we're doing today. The horses, we have some cows. We're putting on events. We have camping. That's with the town board coming to visit. Just some of our crowd and volunteers building barn doors. It's, it's really a passion project, and it's an honor to do it. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about the vision for what we want to do now. That we've got the buzz going and the property up and running. We need to restore these 2 hotel buildings that remain, which is a total of 30 rooms. And so this is some talk about that. So yeah, just some vision about the styles and what it could be. This is our team. I have Jeff that came out today. He's a builder and creator, and this was his place, a beautiful barn that he restored. I wish I had better shots of it, but I looked, and that's the shot I took when I visited, and it really made an impression on me. So we're really happy. Like he had a place kind of like-minded to ours in New Jersey, but he lost it, and he's kind of hoping to join us and do some work with us and become part of the team. Anyway, this is the rest of our team. I have Kenny, he's my partner. He's been, I guess you could say he calls himself the facilitator. And he couldn't be here today, but he's like right up there with me. So this is our we're gonna actually present some numbers today of what we calculate will cost and earn. This is just right now, we're actually starting to partner with some of the local businesses. That's Bethel Woods. Really, we get a lot of customers that are, Bethel Woods doesn't have a hotel or a campsite, so we're only 18 miles away, so we get a lot of our glamping business and is people that are coming out for concerts. So anyway, here's what if we can just get to this phase, which was the most expensive part of it is the infrastructure, which is not completed. The whole big property is one big wastewater system. And we've started the project, and we are committed to finishing it. And we need a drinking water purification system in order to serve the public. And that's the main stuff. And then we will start with one building, which is the smaller and better shape one, 12 rooms. And we decided to make them like long-term stay, so we can rent them as apartments in the off-season, more, better return for your dollar, and short-term during events in the short summer season. So that's about what it's going to cost, and these are some estimates on the gross receipts of earnings. And I have a spreadsheet for anyone who's interested of how I got these numbers. And then the phase 2 is where we really take off and make it, really something spectacular. Like the other building is bigger, and it's right next to the lake, and that has 18 rooms, so that would bring us up to 30 hotel rooms. We'd like to do an indoor event center, so we're not so weather dependent. Right now, pretty much we're 100% outdoor. And we want to add another 50 campsites in a wooded area, like leaving the woods. And also we want to have some accommodations for RVs, which, today's campers are less and less rustic. They like glamping, they want RVs. No one's going to be setting up a tent. So anyway, we'd like to also build another building that's a restaurant and bar and spa. So that's more expensive, but the earnings, obviously go correspondingly go higher. And then in the future, we would like to even, I didn't put the numbers for this, but we would like to expand by buying a neighboring property and start adding condominiums to the mix, kind of like this hotel has done, or many hotels like Hunter Mountain. Some of the ski hotels do that. And also the Villa Roma, which is one of the few surviving old, dinosaurs from the 60s, that's how they do it. They have, it enables our customers to be investors as well. They could live there, whenever they want, and when they're not there, they could let us rent the property out to our guests, and then they would get a portion. So that would be a tremendous source of revenue for the business. And It's my honor to be here today and talk about our project. You know, it's our goal for this to be a win-win for our town, the neighbors, the county, the customers, the staff, and most importantly, our investors who believed in the dream. Thank you.
Today, I introduce you to an actress who changed the world. I want to end today with an actress who changed the world. If I asked you for the name of the smartest woman in the world, throw some names at me. Smartest woman who ever lived. Throw names at me. Come on. Madame Curie. Eleanor Roosevelt. Names. Throw them at me. I know the answer. I know the answer to that question. This has been the first meeting in 32 years where every presenter was female. The first time. So it's only fitting that I end with a woman who probably had the most dramatic impact on the planet Earth in history. And her name was Hetty Kiesler. Hetty Kiesler. Born in Vienna in 1914, Hetty showed a brilliance as a child. 5 years of age, she took a music box apart and put it back together better. She was 5. Her father looked at her. My God, I have a genius here. My daughter is a genius. And he would take her by the hand, right through the streets of Vienna, and he would teach her lessons. He was a very civic-minded man, a very good father. He would tell her, don't be a person of wealth. Don't be a person of fame. Just make a difference in the world. Be a person of value. And that stuck with young Hetty. It stayed with her. It stayed with her for a lifetime. But Hetty Kiesler had what you would consider 100 years ago a horrendous handicap on her way to becoming a world-famous scientist. You see, Hetty Kiesler was not just the most brilliant woman who ever lived. She was very likely the most beautiful woman who ever lived. When Austrian filmmakers put her on screen, people gasped when they saw her on screen. When Walt Disney went around looking for a prototype for Snow White, he used Hetty's image. And then, while she was still a teenager, 1933, they did a full-length movie with Hetty called Ecstasy. How would I describe this movie to you? She was a scared little girl. And the director told her to strip naked on screen and have an orgasm on screen. Let me repeat, the year was 1933. How do you think the world responded to the movie Ecstasy? Any guesses?
Not well.
Not well. Her boat didn't catch fire. Her goddamn boat was nuked. Now, Hetty's beautiful face would keep her on screen for another 25 years. But it was always the same role. Whether it was Samson and Delilah, the female animal, White Cargo, Ziegfeld Girl, doesn't matter, it was the same role, the beautiful whore. Now, think about this. Hetty's father told her, don't be a person of wealth. Don't be a person of fame. Be a person of value. And there was Hetty. She had wealth. She was famous. And she contributed nothing of value. But her mind, oh, that mind. You couldn't stop it. That time, her boyfriend was trying to develop airplanes to be more aerodynamically sound, faster. This boyfriend could have hired any scientist or engineer on the planet Earth. He chose a girlfriend. because he knew she was smarter than any of the scientists or engineers he could have hired. And he gave it to Hetty Kiesler, and she redesigned the airplane, specifically the wings of the airplane. It's still in use today. When World War II broke out, they tried to get Coca-Cola to the servicemen. It's too heavy. You couldn't ship it. Who did they go to? Scientists? Chemists? No. They went to Hetty. And she reduced Coca-Cola to a tiny little cube that, when dropped in water, would fizz up to become Coca-Cola. It wasn't brilliant. It worked. But now we get to the early stage of World War II. It's 1941, 1942. The Germans are winning the war. Their U-boats are too fast, too quick. American torpedoes couldn't catch up. They needed a way to radio control those torpedoes and to stop the Germans from jamming them. Oh, they had every mechanical engineer and scientist in the world working on it. So did Hetty. And she created a concept, an idea, which she called frequency hopping. Frequency hopping. And she brought it into the Navy, sat down with the top brass, got a patent in 1941 under the name of Hetty Kiesler, laid it on the table, and said, I have the answers. And what do you think the Navy heads told her? They smiled, that phony BS smile. They looked at her and said, why don't you put your pretty face to work and raise some money in war bonds? And they put her frequency hopping to the side. Well, the next 2 years, she raised, in today's dollars, $343 million in war bonds for the World War II effort. Then a few years later, someone picked up her little patent, frequency hopping, and they looked at it. And they said, holy Christ, this has serious military implications. Serious implications. So what did our government, never critical, never having any questionable morals, haha. What did our government do? They stole the patent from Hetty. They stole it. They said she was an alien. She was an alien. She was Austrian. She had no right to file an American patent. Even there, if the military was to use the patent, they would normally pay the person for the idea. But our government, again, never hypocritical at all, right? They waited until the patent expired in 1959. The first time frequency hopping was ever used was during the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was a way for the boats in that blockade to communicate with each other wirelessly without any possibility of being jammed, and it worked. One of the reasons that blockade was so successful was because of Hetty's invention. A few years later, frequency hopping was used for surveillance drones in Vietnam. It worked. The 1980s, the military used frequency hopping more and more to communicate with every branch of the military. And then, in the 1990s, it began making its way from the military to the communication industry, into the private sector. And again, people looked at this and said, well, who the hell owns the patent to this? Hetty Kiesler. And around 1997, for the first time, they brought up her name. At this time, Hetty was living in New York. She was penniless. She was a recluse. She was broken. Someone give me the name of frequency hopping today. Give me the name, folks. How about Wi-Fi? How about Bluetooth? How about GPS? Yes, they are here because of Hetty Kiesler. Some of you have a question in your head right now. And it's going something like this. Who the hell is Hetty Kiesler?
Mm-hmm.
1938, Louis B. Mayer, the head of MGM, decided he didn't like the name Kiesler. Too Jewish, he thought. So, Mayer, who probably was the biggest whore in the history of Hollywood, his favorite actress in the 1920s and 30s was named Barbara Lamar. And in 1938, Hetty Kiesler was rebranded as Hetty Lamar. When she died in 2000, I sat there with paper, pencil, and the magic calculator, and I calculated what is the value of that patent today. And my answer was $50 billion. Hetty Lamar and her family received zero. So next time you're sitting in a bar and you're looking to give a toast, how about raising a glass to a woman who came on this earth for the express purpose of making a difference, and simply acknowledge what a brilliant and beautiful life you led. Hetty Lamar, thank you. I will see you all in September.